On this episode of the Facility Playbook, I got to sit down with Shane Hackett, the Executive Director of the Heartland Soccer Association. We got to sit down at Garmin-Olathe Soccer Complexes, which is just one of the amazing things that come from Shane's leadership at Heartland Soccer Association. Although it started years and years ago, Shane came in and identified a way to grow and really grow this program over the Midwest and make it one of the largest and best soccer associations in the country. Hope you enjoy this episode of the Facility Playbook.
Do you own or manage a facility? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Facility Playbook. I'm Luke Wade, founder and CEO of Facility Ally, and this podcast is about helping owners and managers learn from pioneers and veterans in the industries who have built and managed successful sports facilities, entertainment venues, and clubs. Did you know that most of the facilities I just mentioned use between 4 and 6 different softwares to manage their memberships, lessons, leagues, camps, clinics, and more? Revolutionize your facility with Facility Ally's all-in-one system. Learn more at facilityally.com. And today we're at an amazing facility with an awesome club operator. So I feel like we're knocking 2 of those industries out with one. Welcome, Shane Hackett, Executive Director of Heartland Soccer Association.
Great. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks for having us out at this amazing facility. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to Heartland?
Sure. Started in the radio business. I was actually the executive producer for the Kansas City Chiefs, a little bit for the Kansas City Royals. And it was my radio background that kind of led me into sports, but I grew up playing sports like a lot of kids in America, but ended up specializing ultimately in soccer. Went to school on a soccer scholarship, went to school and played overseas in England, and the 2 of those being in the sports business and soccer specifically got me here to Heartland Soccer about 22 years ago. Yeah. It's actually been around longer than that. It's been around since 1977. And it's a really unique structure. If you're familiar with the soccer fields out at Heritage Park, way out at 185th, way on the south side of town, in 1977, 4 clubs came together, kind of pulled all their resources so they could have interleague play. And it's really rare because a lot of times when you see, the club soccer or any type, whether it's volleyball, everybody has their own little facility. And this one, everybody came together, put all their kind of fiscal monies together and had one facility. And that's allowed us then, as we started to build these truly world-class soccer facilities, we now have multiple ones because you've got Heartland kind of as an aggregator kind of comes together, and we can, truly guarantee the play both on league and tournaments to support these big facilities.
So 1976?
77.
And so when did you get involved, and how have you kind of been involved taking it over?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that I had this grand vision for becoming the largest soccer league and tournament host in the country. I didn't. I got involved when I sold radio stations back in the mid-'90s, late '90s. We ultimately moved back here to Kansas City because this is where my family's from. It's where my wife's family's from. So we moved back, and I don't know that my kids had much of an option, but because I was so excited to coach them as they were growing up. So all the kids were in soccer, 5 kids. And I came back to Kansas City and immediately started having people say, hey, listen, can you come help with this? You've worked in other areas in soccer, and we want somebody with a business background, but also knows recreational and competitive soccer. And so I took Heartland over about 22 years ago. At that time, we were roughly 365 teams in a league, which is a very large league. And you compare that to now, 22 years later, we're almost 1,500 teams per season and multiple seasons, and have turned into the largest tournament host in the country. So I didn't have the vision. It was one of those things, we just kept growing it, building it, trying to make a better product. And I think, some of it has to do with Kansas City. We're a little bit of a crazy sports town. We don't have mountains, we don't have oceans. We kind of live and die through our sports. So and luckily, we have the second highest per capita of kids that play soccer in the nation here, and so we've got all of them that play split pretty much evenly, boys and girls. So we got everybody playing, and it's just continued to grow. I think another thing that's happened is kids are starting at a younger age now. We program Heartland from 9 to 19, but on the club side, kids are starting 3-4 years old, doing little mini kicker programs, just getting in, and ultimately that's what it's about. It's about having kids get out, exercise, compete. There's so many great things that happens from sports, but really it's about them just getting out, getting exercise, and having community with their team.
Sure. That's amazing. And thanks for unpacking that a little bit of the whole story. I didn't know it's been around since the 70s. That's amazing. And so maybe if somebody just asked you today, what is Heartland today?
Yeah. So we actually run 3 leagues. We run the typical spring and fall, and then we have a winter league, which we actually play here at the Heartland Soccer Complex, and it's kind of for the older kids. And when I got involved with Heartland, we had leagues and we had 3 tournaments. Now, because of these complexes where teams can travel in, I'll just give you an example. So this weekend we had a girls tournament this last weekend. We have a boys tournament this weekend. We've got 400 and about 65 teams from 16 states and Canada coming in to play. And we used to talk about Kansas City being a drive market. So I'm a NASCAR fan as well. You go out to the NASCAR, you're walking up to NASCAR and you're looking at all the different plates, Iowa, Nebraska, Dakotas. Our soccer's a lot like that. So people drive in from all these states, a couple flights, but it's a drive-in market. And they all come here to play. And one is facilities, but the second one is when you start getting the masses, you get competitions at all levels. So a lot of people go, only teams that travel are just the best of the best of the best. They're winning state cups. That's not who Heartland is. Heartland, we don't make a preference over the very top elite teams to teams playing Division 8, 9 competitive or recreational teams. We want everybody. We want everybody to come in. We want everybody to have a good time. And one of the things I'm proud of is so when my daughter was 12, my youngest daughter playing here, I looked up because she had a good friend under the same name who was playing a couple divisions higher than her. And I looked up and I said, how many teams do we have? So U12 girls, under 12 girls in league, we had 124 girls teams playing. And what that means is when you think about a division, you played 8 games, so you get divisions of 9, is all these teams get like competition. And so, in a smaller market that didn't have as many teams, if my daughter's team tried to play one of these upper teams, they might lose 10-0, right? So they get discouraged, but they're having competitive games all the time. And that's true for the tournaments as well. When somebody's coming in from out of town, we go through and we seed them, but they know if they come in, they're going to be in a division where they're going to get light competition. And that really, you want it to be a good experience, right? You don't want somebody to come down from South Dakota and beat 15-0. That's not fun. And that would happen if you place the wrong teams in the wrong places. But because we have so many people that play, we can offer great competition at their skill level.
Sure. And I mean, I have a million questions, all of that, but how do you do that? How do you make sure they're matched appropriately?
Well, it actually is a testament to the staff that so every time someone signs up, we will go through, they submit their records, and then we go through and actually match them up. When we turn teams away, it's truly because they're either too good for the competition that signs up, or they just don't fit. Because you don't really want it. We work against people having a bad experience. Does it happen sometimes in the thousands and thousands of games? And to give you the scope of Heartland, we do about 15,000 games per year. That's how many we run. So it's significant. Obviously, there are a handful of blowouts, but they're pretty rare. So it has to do with really the diligence of going through and hopefully getting the teams in the right spots.
And do you have anything that helps you manage that, or you kind of do that manually?
It's a manual process, collected electronically, and then manual seeding.
That's amazing. So yeah, you definitely have a lot of staff going through that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're taking kind of the middle average. You're cutting the top best teams and cutting kind of the lower.
In a best case scenario, we're attracting all the top best teams. But that's where it happens, right? It tends to be lower and higher.
So leagues, several seasons a year, so 3 seasons a year.
Yeah. And
then tournaments, are those year round or are those in the season?
They fall in the same weekend every single year because people plan them out in advance. So right now we're at 16 tournaments, which includes a couple of college showcases, and you hold them exact same time so that when teams hold their tryouts in June, they kind of know, hey, this season we're going to go to 2 tournaments. We're going to travel to Kansas City twice. We're going to get it into the season, early season, however that was.
Sure. That's really cool. And so you said when you got here, there was only how many tournaments?
Three.
Yeah. So now 16.
Yeah.
So when you got here, maybe talk about what Heartland was at that time, and how you, like you said, you didn't see the vision, but how you kind of managed the growth, and maybe, obviously we've gotten to facilities now. So maybe just walk me through that journey of like, hey, I started helping here and there.
Sure.
And what was the kind of transition to taking over?
Yeah, there's just talking about youth sports in general, our kind of history, like when I grew up, I just had a dedicated German coach who was phenomenal, who worked with a lot of us. And a lot of the guys I played with all ended up going to school, playing soccer, played at very, very high levels, playing the Olympic program, which we're all lucky enough to do. But those were like volunteer moms and dads, right? Who were part of small, either they were independent or they were small little nonprofits, because you got every dollar going in, just taking care of kids' jerseys and getting them on that. And so now, what I actually would say, for better or for worse, to be able to afford, a facility like this, which is right out of $40 million soccer specific, a facility, there are business metrics that have to be applied. Nobody's going to make a $40 million investment if they don't know that it can be filled up, or at least I should say they shouldn't do that. And so it was really putting both the business side together with an understanding of what kind of happens at a club level. And so Heartland was, and I say it was unique because it really is. I talk to people all over the country and the world because people want to know, why does Kansas City have so many of these? And especially for, I know markets by media market size. So we're like the 30th largest media market. How can Kansas City have more of these world-class soccer facilities than anybody, not only in the country, but in the world? And I think it's a couple things. I think we draw people in from around the Midwest to come in and play. And we are a sports-centric market. We love sports. I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, Kansas City Royals fan. Was just at the sporting game this weekend. And I mean, it's just, we love our sports and we support our kids in playing sports. So a lot of it has to do with that market. But Heartland was a unique position where it kind of pulled in all the top clubs. And we're here. This is Johnson County, Kansas. And Johnson County is it's a terrific spot. And the facility before this was the Scheels Soccer Complex. That was kind of the big one. That's the one where we got the first one built, and immediately it was all sold out. We have a sister, or I shouldn't say sister, they're actually a member club of ours called Sporting Blue Valley. 6,000, 8,000 kids that play in that club. So it's filled there with us. We work on that together. And then we have this one where we do everything here at the Garma Complex. But actually, for Heartland to run, we actually have 4 complexes like this that we fill up on a weekend basis.
Amazing.
Every single week.
So it started before Scheels, which we've actually interviewed, and before Garmin. What was the location you were playing at? I know you mentioned the South Home.
Yeah, the grass fields at Heritage, and obviously the issue. First of all, grass is awesome, unless you play on it from 7 a.m. in the morning to 11 at night, and you're right, range. You got to, there's a couple things. One, we call it little kids, right? It's called herd ball. They go right up and down the middle of the fields, and so you overplay them. And if you want grass to look great, you can't overplay them. And ours, we're all about getting kids out there and just having them play. So synthetic works great. I don't advocate this for pro games. I don't like seeing pro games played on turf. I love seeing them played on great natural grass. It's getting 1 game a week. But for what we program, this is phenomenal because you can play on it. And as you said, rain, the only time we don't have games is when there's lightning. I mean, if you get a downpour, this drains and, lightning goes away and we're back on, which couldn't do on grass. You'd tear it up and ruin it.
So the main fields was the grass fields down south, and then expanded to Scheels after that.
Yes, and we were running both complexes, and then the migration was we opened up Scheels Soccer Village. That has 5 youth fields on it. That's where Sporting Kansas City trained in the beginning. And so they were there. And then we built the Compass Mineral Fields out in the UG with Wyandotte County. and then this was our next one.
So with that many players and families, how do you effectively communicate with everybody?
Yeah, all electronically. Yeah, email, text. Yeah.
And have you been doing that the whole time, or did you? What was it like before? Essentially, email and all that stuff.
Email, text became later. Website updates, those type of things, and weather lines. But in our communication for the most part is directly to coaches and admins.
Okay.
Yeah, for our communication piece.
Do you run into any issues with that, playing telephone? It goes through the coach and then the players and the families?
Not so much. They're pretty good because most of them are on. So like Dick's Sporting Good they have Game Changer, right, which is a terrific team management piece, and so they're usually communicating through those.
So maybe talk about you have a family code of conduct. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about? Has that been around forever? Did you implement that?
We've implemented it, right? We have spectator code of conduct, we have coaches code of conduct, we have referee code of conduct. So, with me being in my position as executive director, I probably have a better holistic, vision of what this is, and it's truly a community, and none of us can exist without the others. And so, ideally, when parents come out and we're all cheering on our kids, it's all positive reinforcement. We know realistically that doesn't always happen. I've been a coach. I've been frustrated with referees, and so, but that's realism. But we do expect everyone, everybody on the sideline, from the coaches and parents, we expect them to be respectful. And when they don't, we have a code of conduct, and they have to be within that. And, sometimes it's just, you diffuse the situation and so that people can move on and realize it truly isn't life or death, and everything moves on. And honestly, it's really rarely ever the kids. It's usually adults, right? That's where the issues lie.
So, how did you originally, when Scheels came along, how did you start figuring out? It sounds like you worked with a lot of different cities and governments. Was that kind of you're using city fields, and then was that how you decided to go after more fields?
Well, so we had a long-standing partnership with Johnson County Parks and Rec, this is before me, but the Heritage Soccer Park started out as like 6 fields and expanded to 18 over time. And then we were, working with multiple municipalities to build soccer fields, not specifically turf fields, but to build soccer fields. We didn't know this was. That's where I say I didn't have this great vision to build all these. I wish I did, but I didn't. And, once we actually got the OP fields built, then it gave a model. And when we built those fields, Luke, I had people flying in from all over the world, Germany, Brazil, because that was the largest number of turf fields built anywhere in the world when those 12 went up. And so people came in all over. How did you guys do this? And none of them are the same. When we finally opened this complex here, I had been working with Olathe on a complex for 15 years. And I started on the land next door, then it popped over to Lenexa, then it ended up over back here, and you need the stars to align. They're super expensive. But by that time, the model had proven itself out because we had built Scheels. We did it with the hotel and entertainment tax there, and it worked. And it's been, and these are huge economic drivers. And, you're in the sports business, and you know how this works. I mean, like this weekend when we have the boys Heritage Invitational Tournament, our impact will be real close to about $10 million between hotel rooms and that's just over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so for the local economy here, it's unbelievable.
So that was kind of a great niche to get in with the city. You already had a partnership, and so you were like, hey, if we can prove this, it's actually going to improve the community around us. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you do the same thing here? Use the hotel?
Oh yeah. Well, no, there's a little bit different. This was a private developer, but they have what's called a TIF, or a tax increment funding. So believe it or not, out of the 4 that we operate, each one was financed a little bit different, but with similar tax pieces that were put together. And the one thing I'll say about these, I'm talking from Heartland's perspective, but I've been the person to kind of help put the pieces of the puzzle together. So I do, like, if you look at it, what does it take to get a world-class complex like this? So first of all, we serve the local community. So We're in Olathe, Kansas, so Olathe kids are playing here, so that we've got kids ages 3 up, right, that are getting involved playing. So we're serving the local community. Everybody's playing here. Then Heartland does an overlay where I'm bringing in then people from all over playing in league, and then we of course bring the tournaments in as well. So you're really hitting this at multiple levels, and that's how the Scheels Overland Park complex works as well. As you've got it's in Overland Park, so you've got Sporting Blue Valley, which is Overland Park, and Overland Park Soccer Club. They're running all of their recreational program, which is huge, and every kid gets to play. So it's serving local community. Then Heartland I kind of call it the overlay of league and tournaments then comes in after that.
So obviously, expensive facility. Garmin's got the name. You've got a lot of banners around. So maybe talk a little about the business side of things and all the partnerships that you have and how those work.
Yeah, so partnerships are big, and it's probably one of the things when I got involved, coming from a radio background. The way you make money in radio is you sell advertising, right? So I was excited to take this game that's played such a big role in my life and my kids and family's life, and be able to tell that story. What the tough part is, when I was in the radio business, if I go to an ad agency, there's a media buyer there for radio. So like I one of my first jobs here was with KCMO Radio, and you'd go in and there's an ad buyer there, and they look at your Arbitron ratings and they're like, okay, this client will make an ad buy, and that's how that business works. When it comes to the sports sponsorship and everything else, there is no ad agency. You walk in and they go, hey, here's our sponsorship group, right? So you're making individual connections, and so it's a much longer process, but it's a really important important piece of the puzzle. And this is something that we don't really talk about, but I'm actually very proud of it. So I mentioned that I've been here a little over 20 years. We charge the exact same amount for league as we did 22 years ago for Heartland Soccer. Now, since that time, we've added all these very, very expensive complexes, world-class complexes. We've added medical. We've added all these extra expenses. So how do we do that? And we've done it a lot through the sponsorship side. So we've brought in multiple sponsors to be able to do this. And of course, tournaments have grown, and we're a nonprofit. So we're not there. There's no money going out to stakeholders. It's kind of all being plowed back in. So the whole idea is to keep keep it as inexpensive as possible on the league side, and it's worked. And so you see Garmin everywhere, and I really advocated when Garmin was doing the naming rights. I was like, listen, if we could put windscreens up that say Garmin everywhere, it'd be awesome. I want them to get the biggest bang for the buck that they can, and also they're paying for all these great windscreens here at the same time.
I've never seen this, man. I was actually walking through and I'm like, it's amazing that you have so much space and there's so much wind, and those are different types of things, and you see them everywhere. I mean, the second you walk up.
Yeah, and this sits up on a hill a little bit, so the windscreens are practical, and it gives them great visibility. And but the sponsorships are so important. They're not easy though. It's difficult.
That's really, really cool. So kudos to you for doing that. And how was that was that something you were like, we're never doing this? Or was it just like, we got sponsorship, we don't need to do it. We got sponsorship. And so did it just eventually be like, hey, we don't need to raise them? Or
yeah, I think it was a little more organic. We've never said that. We actually reduced the rates of recreational play along the way. So we've actually gone down on the rec side. But it was more about, I remember the first year that I took over both league and then tournaments. Tournaments actually used to be kind of outside of Heartland, and I pulled them in and then started bringing in some sponsors. I got the Toyota dealerships, and we started pulling stuff in. And there was a year where Heartland went from losing money to making money. And I remember our president, who was an attorney at that time, Dale saying to me, he goes, Shane, we don't really need to, we made $120,000 and everything's public. So it's like, he said, we made $120,000. He goes, we don't really need to make money. It's great that we are. Now let's figure out how to redeploy that money back into, right? So that we started investing into fields. We started making those type of investments. And so the goal is, hopefully at the every year we just break even. Yeah, sometimes we're up a little bit, sometimes we're down a little bit, just depending on how attendance goes. Really, tournaments have the most significant, if we're going to make money or lose money, but we're always within a range.
So how many refs do you employ and work with and manage any given week to month?
So I mentioned that we do about 15,000 games per year. Pre-pandemic, we had about 2,300 referees. And so the pandemic was brutal for our referee pool. When we came back from the pandemic, we started with about 600. And so we're building that back, and we're now up in the 900 to 1,000 range. And it used to be, going back 15 years ago before we built Scheels, it was our biggest issue was fields. And it's not. We've got incredible fields now. But our single biggest issue is referees. And so we're constantly recruiting, constantly training, and trying to get people in. And, there's an age-out process to a lot of kids. We have a lot of youth referees. They'll go off to college, and it's keeping as many as we can, try to get them to return when they come play for college, and also trying to keep as many adult referees.
So any specific tips or tricks you have around finding, hiring, and training referees?
I would probably say that is, and I would expand that to just everybody involved, is where we get our greatest participation and retention. It's within the community. Like every kid that's out here that's reffing, that's 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, they either played or they're still playing, right? So it's a great way for them to be able to be involved in another aspect of the game, but also get paid for it. And that's, if there's one thing where we've seen rates go up, is what we pay referees, right? It's a constant upgrading and try to make sure that that they're getting adequate play. And it's, by the way, I don't know if you've ever reffed games before. It's difficult, right? had a whole different appreciation when I got my referee badge, and then my son got a referee badge, and we went out and reffed a couple games. I'm like, okay.
I started refereeing like kids t-ball games when I was in high school, and I had parents yelling and screaming at me. I'm like 17 years old, So. And then, I started reffing with Casey Crew very early on, and people, man, they take the game seriously.
Very serious,
yeah. Sure. So I can definitely relate to that. So any tips on, it sounds like most of your refs are youth?
But there are two specific groups, kind of the adult referees, and then we have, we kind of have a lot of the kids that are players that continue to play. And just as an aside, I'll mention that there are 2 referees right now that are Major League Soccer referees that came through Heartland. It's always interesting to talk about pros, like a Matt Beasler, right? Matt's a household name here in Kansas City. Matt came up through Heartland and became a pro player, as multiple players have. And then we actually have multiple referees in Major League Soccer. Oh, and by the way, one of them was on the World Cup final this year, men's World Cup final, Kyle Atkins.
Yeah, that is awesome. So do you have specific training programs for them? So if I came in and said, I want to become a soccer ref, maybe walk me through.
So it's a combination. I say we as Heartland, but I've talked greater as the soccer community. We have a Kansas Referee Association, and we work with them. We put on classes, and then we hold separate trainings as well. So you have to get certified, to make sure you know the rules of the game, and then you go through. Usually you'll start on an assistant referee running the line, right, where you're not calling everything, it's out of bounds and offside and those type of things, and then we have a progression, and then for the kids that and adults that want to pursue it to the next level, we actually have kind of a pathway to the pros, and so they can go kind of the next level up from a Heartland is getting in our state cup pool for state cup. And then, of course, part of that progression is some people will go to do high school and college games, and that's a natural progression.
Awesome. So outside of referees, sounds like that's the biggest problem that you're handling, or I feel like it's a lot of people's problem finding staff that can actually appropriately manage it the way you'd like it to be seen. What is the next biggest problem you feel like you face day to day as Heartland managing the club?
We're pushing the boundaries on just on growth again. We're kind of in a maxed out piece at the moment. Part of one of the reasons that we did extremely well we're Johnson County based. So I've obviously got this facility. I've got offices in OP. I'm actually a Missourian. And so I worked really hard to kind of pull Missouri in and get everybody to play together. And now just talking about for league where, we have about 6 different states that travel in to play league, and we accommodate them. So let's say that somebody's coming in from Des Moines, they can come in and they can play their 8 games over 3 weekends. So it's almost, and probably affordability, it's a lot cheaper than if they were going to do 3 different tournaments, right? They just get one league fee. And so, we're at that tipping point right now where we're kind of maxed out in terms of field availability, and we need to keep it kind of here. We have, thankfully, we got new fields that were built up north, and but that's for Johnson County people. That's a long way.
Yeah. So you feel like it, is the goal to just really keep refining what you have now, or do you think you think you will try and grow to another level?
There's not a growth plan like if we were a public company and we're trying to hit certain growth metrics. That doesn't exist. I think what we continue to do is just try to put out a great product, and that's where the focus really is. There was a time right after we built the Overland Park complex. It wasn't as if there was hockey stick growth and it's like, oh, there's new fields and everybody clamored to them. It took about a year for people to know they existed, even with us kind of promoting it. And then once people came, they're like, oh, I get it. I'd never seen anything like this before. Now people know when they travel to Kansas City what kind of experience they're going to get. So we're seeing growth in tournaments. We're still seeing growth in league, but it's a couple of percentage points annually. And so that's manageable growth. If we were growing by 10, 15, 20%, honestly, that would be a little bit unmanageable.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can only imagine 15,000 games a year, all the referees, it would be hard to manage that growth. Have you ever, kind of maxed out soccer, have you ever looked into growing to other sports, right?
Yeah, it's so I'm a big football fan. It's hard to live in Kansas City and not be a Chiefs fan right now. So, we've looked at for a couple of other facilities that are kind of on the drawing board. We've looked at flag football, but Heartland Soccer is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our charter is soccer. So Heartland won't ever deviate from that.
Sure.
I would think if we ever expand beyond where we're at and we've got empty fields, that we would probably partner with somebody. But at the moment, the only time these fields are available are, during the summer, which is our only downtime. I'm talking July, really. You have tryouts. You've got a little bit of time in July. There's camps and there's things like that. But I'm talking about, most people don't know this, but our games kick off at 7:15 a.m. in the morning, and we close down at 11 at night. And every single field is filled all the time. So, and that's so incredibly rare.
Yeah.
But that is the business model. I mean, that's where we're at. But there's just not a lot of open fields. So it's kind of in those off. Now if you come out here in January when we'll run a winter league, that's not the case, right? But we're talking about main seasons, spring and fall.
Sure. So is futsal included in your charter? Have you tried to do anything with futsal?
We actually have the largest futsal league in the country. Yeah, so we're Heartland Futsal. And so, yeah, we have that here. And so that's one of the indoor places, or one of our indoor pieces. And it's not uncommon that the older teams will play futsal, and then they'll also play here. We only, for our outdoor league, we only do a full-sided game, so 13s and above. And so, yeah, and it's smaller. Like I think our largest has been about 180 teams. Compare that to 1,500 teams that we're used to. So, and all the games are played here in Gorman.
Was futsal always a part of it, or did you add that?
No, we added that about 8 or 9 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the game of futsal. I've had my kids have played it, and yeah, I've coached it and taken teams to nationals, and
it's so much more challenging as far as foot skills go.
Yes.
And controlling the ball. It's amazing.
Yeah, the balls, for the people who aren't familiar with it, you play on a basketball court with a weighted ball, and the ball rolls so quick. So kids really have to get their foot on top of the ball, because else it's going to roll away. And so, like you said, the ball skill side. And so I know for my kids specifically, when they played futsal, when they came back that next season, their small ball skills were always.
Yeah, so it's gone pretty well 9 years ago. So that's awesome. What advice would you give to like a new sports facility that's maybe opening up? What's the number one thing you would tell them to kind of focus on?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something like this, obviously having the programming where you're serving the community and then seeing what you can bring in from outside. I talk to different cities, especially here in Kansas, that are looking to bring people in, and it's always like, focus on your local community. What can you do there? And I think if Heartland wasn't so big, this type of facility, I'll give you the perfect example. When we were building the Scheels Overland Park complex, it was myself and Peter Vermees, who's the coach of Sporting. Peter's also the technical director of Sporting Blue Valley. We were working on that and we knew it was going to be 12 fields. We're like, okay, can we fill those up? Yeah, we can get there. What else are we going to do? So when we built that, we made it so there would be soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, football, rugby. You can play all those sports. Now, by the time we got it built 3 years later, we filled it up with soccer, right? And we filled this one up with soccer. But I would say make all of these multi-sport, and a lot of the ones that I'm consulting with or working with now, we're also trying to figure out how you can incorporate baseball, t-ball, softball, everything into it. And as you know, with baseball now, you literally pull a mound out, right?
Yeah.
Drag a mound out.
Yeah. It's amazing how different it is. I played baseball growing up and soccer, and it's just so different, the field setups and everything like that. And just the thought process, and like you mentioned, like being able to play year round, whether all that stuff goes into it. And when you're not operating, the kids aren't playing. And so I think it's really cool to see the transition of all that stuff that has happened. But it's also interesting, you said, to focus on the community. Clearly the community wanted soccer.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's great that you were thought about those sort of things. When it comes to these other sports, what are some of the things you're thinking of when you said, obviously you'd have to line it differently for baseball. Do you ever get to a point where it's too much on the ground, too many lines, or?
Well, hopefully you're thinking through that. So if you look at this facility, and if there's a lot of them, and I've used Scheels kind of as the comparison. So those lines are sewn in. So this is Shaw turf, and so at OP it's actually green turf sewn in a white line, green turf. I did these differently, and I helped design these. And you've had Vance Repka on your podcast, and Vance, I used Vance as the sports architect on this, but I wanted all this green. So for those very reasons, is that we can literally take a power washer and those will come up, and so you can reline them any size that you want. So we move. So for the older kids, 13 and above, they're playing 11v11. They're 11 kids versus 11. When you're going in the smaller, they're going 7v7, 9v9, and we're running the fields the other way. And versus having all kinds of extra lines, this is more work, the way we're doing it here, but we actually pressure wash it off, and we put those lines on there.
So cool. I don't think I knew that they were the difference. I didn't realize that the other ones were sewn in and that these actually weren't.
Yeah.
How long does that typically take? And I'm assuming you guys don't do it very often.
Yeah, ideally you're not doing it often, and it depends on how much paint you're putting down. And like we'll know whether or not we're, like, as an example, this is a pod of 6 full-size fields up here, and then we've got, of those 6, we've got 2 of them that are converted to small-sided, and so that means that there's 2 small-sided fields on one field, and so ideally we're painting these about 2 to 3 times a season.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, that's not too bad.
And you could put down even more permanent, thicker paint, but we do rotate it around, right? Because of the wear on the field, and we're trying to get hopefully a full 10, 11, 12 years lifespan out of these.
So if you started all over today with Heartland, what would you do different?
I don't know. Well, I want to give credit to the people that actually started it. And then, Heartland was started about the time I was playing as a kid, and I don't think they knew what they created when they pulled all of these clubs together, and it's so rare, Luke, because clubs, as you know, clubs compete against each other. They're competing for kids and everything else, but these clubs were smart enough to put this umbrella kind of governing body in as Heartland. And so that's kind of for the greater good. And because of that, instead of having this owned by one club and they're kind of playing home games here and then maybe traveling to other places, now everybody gets to benefit, and they've kind of pulled all their finances together through Heartland, and now they've got these incredible world-class complexes. So I wouldn't change it. I'd like to give credit to I don't even know who it was that came up with it, but it's brilliant, because I talk to people in New York and other places, and they're like, how do you get, like, these clubs won't even talk to each other? And I'm like, it's kind of the nature of the beast, right? They're all competing. They're competing on the field. They're competing for kids. They want to grow their club, and it's understandable.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do with the Midwest. I think we have a lot more people here that care about the greater good than care about the competition. So not sure it would have worked anywhere other than Kansas City. So happy to hear that. So what do the next 3 years look like for Heartland?
I think we continue kind of incremental growth. One of the brand new things, and this will be the first time I've actually ever talked about it with anybody outside of staff, but every single one of these fields has new AI cameras on it. So we have brand new technology with VidSport. We've been testing it all season. So every single game can be live streamed anywhere. They can also recorded, and then you got back-end software, and you could go multiple levels deep, right? You could just go, so as a parent, what I would love to have is I'd love to have my 5 kids where I've got game footage of them playing for all the nostalgic reasons, and I'd love for them to be able to see it and show their kids when they were there, hopefully when their kids are up and playing. But all the way down to being able to freeze frame and going, oh, how far is this defender from this? Look at the shape of the defense, where the midfielders, right? And you can look at how plays develop and how the team from a coaching standpoint. So there's all these different levels. And this is the largest deployment of AI camera systems in the world. And it's on every single field, both full-size fields and the small fields. And we'll actually be announcing this, and we'll have everything. We're actually starting out with our Winter League, and every single Winter League will be live stream broadcast.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Well, thank you so much for having us out today, and thank you so much for what you've done to Kansas City. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks. We'll see you next time on the Facility Playbook.